a $50,000 Hermes bag, a first-class seat on United Flight 1109, and a woman who believed her purse had more right to be there than the black man whose ticket stub read Seat 1B. She picked a fight, dripping with prejudice, not knowing the man she was insulting wasn't just another passenger. He was the only person who could save her entire company. By the time the flight was cancelled just minutes later, it was too late. The price of her entitlement? Everything. This is the story of how a simple bag on a seat cost a woman her entire future. The SFO First Class lounge was an oasis of beige and muted browns, smelling faintly of complimentary espresso and nervous energy. Marcus Thorne barely noticed. He sat in a worn leather armchair, his eyes closed, not in rest, but in focus. He wasn't just flying to Austin, he was flying to conquer Austin. The $4.2 billion acquisition of Apex Systems was the final move, the capstone that would cement his company, Aegis Innovations, as the undisputed leader in predictive AI. He was a man who lived by a schedule, a man who measured his life in successfully executed quarters. At 42, he had built an empire from code and nerve, yet he knew that to men like the one he'd just passed at the bar, who looked at his tailored Brioni suit and Patek Philippe watch with a gaze of confused suspicion, he was still just a black man in a space they felt wasn't his. He sighed, pushing the thought away. It was wasted energy. His phone chimed, a simple "wheels up in 90" from his COO. He stood, his 6'2" frame unfolding from the chair. He picked up his single carry-on, a sleek, minimalist leather briefcase, and headed toward Gate 72. Boarding for United Flight 1109 to Austin had already begun. He walked past the chaotic scrum of economy and joined the short, privileged line for Group 1. The gate agent, a tired-looking man named David, offered him a professional but weary smile, scanned his digital pass, and waved him through. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Thorne." Marcus nodded and stepped into the jet bridge. He felt the familiar mild tension in his shoulders, the pre-flight ritual of mentally detaching from the ground and focusing on the task ahead. He stepped onto the plane, turned left into the first-class cabin, and stopped. His seat was 1B, an aisle seat. Currently, it was occupied by a large, blindingly white Hermes Birkin bag. The bag's owner was in 1A, the window seat. She was a woman in her late 50s, with a helmet of platinum blonde hair, a crisp linen suit, and a face that seemed permanently fixed in a state of mild disapproval. She was scrolling through her phone, one perfectly manicured finger, swiping with sharp, aggressive taps. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice polite, deep, and steady. The woman, Carolyn Sterling, did not look up. "Yes?" she snapped, as if he were a waiter. "I believe your bag is in my seat." Now she looked up. Her eyes, a pale, icy blue, flickered over him, from his face, down his suit, to his shoes and back. It was a scan not of appraisal, but of appraisal. She seemed to be calculating his worth, his right to be there. Her lip curled just slightly. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with a saccharine condescension. "I'm so sorry, but—" A word she drew out, weaponizing it. "My bag is very expensive, and I simply can't have it on the floor. It's a Birkin." She said the name as if it were a minor deity. "There's plenty of room for you to just slip past. I'm sure it won't be a bother." She turned back to her phone, a clear, definitive dismissal. Marcus stood in the aisle. The flight attendant at the front, Chloe, was busy greeting other passengers, her back to them. A few other first-class passengers were filtering in, their eyes darting between Marcus, the bag, and the woman, sensing the voltage in the air. This was the script. He knew this script by heart, the one where his patience was demanded as a prerequisite for his presence. "Ma'am," he said, his voice losing none of its calm, but gaining a distinct edge of finality. "This isn't a negotiation. That is my assigned seat. Please move your bag." Carolyn's head snapped up, her face flushing a dull, angry red beneath her expensive foundation. "Well, I never. Who do you think you are, speaking to me in that tone? I am a Premier 1K member, and I will not be ordered around. This bag stays here. Find another seat." "There are no other seats, ma'am. This is a full flight," Marcus replied, his patience, a resource he guarded as carefully as his stock options, beginning to fray. "You can put it in the overhead bin or under your own seat. But it is not sitting in mine." "The overhead bin? With everyone's filthy luggage?" she scoffed, horrified. "Absolutely not. I paid for this seat." She waved a hand at her own window seat. "And I expect a certain level of comfort. That includes my belongings." "You paid for one seat, ma'am, as did I," Marcus said, pulling his printed ticket confirmation from his jacket pocket, though he didn't need to. "Seat 1B. "This is ridiculous," Carolyn huffed, her voice rising, drawing the attention of Chloe, the flight attendant, who hurried over, her face a mask of practiced concern. "Is everything all right here?" Chloe asked, her eyes already knowing the answer. "No, it is not," Carolyn snapped, pointing a finger at Marcus. "This man is harassing me. He's demanding I move my bag, and he's being very aggressive." Marcus simply held up his ticket. "Seat 1B. She has her bag on my seat and refuses to move it." Chloe looked at Carolyn, her smile tightening. "Ma'am, I do need you to stow your bag so this gentleman can take his seat. Boarding is almost complete." "This is an outrage," Carolyn declared, though she could see she was losing. She grabbed the bag, not with care, but with theatrical, angry movements, and stuffed it furiously at her own feet, where it now sat awkwardly, half in her footwell, half in Marcus's. "Thank you," Marcus said, his voice flat. He didn't look at Carolyn. He slid past her, a maneuver made difficult by her refusal to move her legs, and settled into 1B. He put his own briefcase neatly under the seat in front of him, buckled his seatbelt, and pulled out his noise-cancelling headphones. He was a man of profound self-control, but he could feel the pulse in his jaw. He put on his headphones, selected a Vivaldi concerto, and closed his eyes, willing the tension to recede. He had a $4.2 billion deal to close. He would not let this woman, this relic of a bygone era, take up one more second of his processing power. He didn't see the look Carolyn shot him. It was pure venom. She was not done. Not by a long shot. She pulled out her phone and began typing furiously. "This airline service is awful. Harassed in first class by an aggressive passenger and incompetent staff. United." The cabin door closed. Marcus felt the gentle pushback from the gate. He took a deep, cleansing breath. "Austin," he thought. "Just get me to Austin." The plane had barely disconnected from the jet bridge when the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Folks, this is Captain Miller up front. Apologies, but we seem to have a small indicator light that's just popped up here on the console. It's likely just a faulty sensor, but protocol requires we have maintenance take a look before we taxi. We're going to hold here for a few minutes. We appreciate your patience." A collective, audible groan rippled through the cabin. Marcus sighed, reopening his eyes. This was exactly what he didn't need. A delay. Beside him, Carolyn Sterling was practically vibrating with indignation. "Unbelievable," she muttered, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "Absolutely typical. You pay thousands for a ticket, and they can't even get off the ground on time." She looked at Marcus as if he were somehow responsible for the delay, a part of the general conspiracy against her comfort. See what you started? She hissed. Marcus, determined not to engage, simply gave her a cool, uncomprehending look, as if she were a piece of abstract art he couldn't quite decipher. This, it turned out, was the worst thing he could have done. To Carolyn Sterling, being ignored was a declaration of war. "Don't you look at me like that," she said, her voice dropping to a low, spiteful growl. "I know your type. You come in here, all flash and no substance, thinking your fancy suit gives you the right to bully people. You probably got this ticket with air miles you didn't even earn." Marcus slowly removed his headphones. He turned his body slightly, as much as the seatbelt would allow, to face her. "Ma'am," he said, and the cabin class divider curtain could have frozen from the ice in his voice. "We're going to be in this metal tube together for the next 3 hours, assuming we ever take off. I have no interest in speaking to you. You have no interest in speaking to me. I would suggest, for the comfort of everyone, we honor that preference." "Oh, you'd like that, wouldn't you?" she sneered. "So you can just sit there, all smug. People like you always think you're better than everyone else. But I see you. I see exactly what you are." "And what am I, exactly?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. He wasn't angry. He was tired. But he was also curious. This was a specimen of prejudice so pure it was almost academically interesting. "You're an interloper," she whispered, leaning in. The smell of her expensive, cloying perfume washed over him. "This world," she waved a hand around the first-class cabin, "it isn't for you. You can wear the suit, you can buy the watch, but you don't belong here. You just make it uncomfortable for the rest of us." For a full 10 seconds, Marcus did not speak. He just looked at her. He saw the deep lines of bitterness around her mouth, the frantic, unhappy energy in her eyes. He felt a brief, surprising flash of pity. She was a woman trapped in her own poisoned worldview. "You're right about one thing," Marcus said finally. "It is uncomfortable, but the discomfort is all yours." He put his headphones back on. This was a period, an end stop to the conversation. Carolyn's face contorted. Being dismissed again, and with such surgical precision, was more than she could bear. She looked around for an ally, an audience. The tech bro in 2D, Ben, was watching, his expression one of open disgust. At her, the flight attendant, Chloe, was busy in the galley. Carolyn felt the hot flush of humiliation turn to white-hot rage. She was Sterling Ventures. Her family had been on the Mayflower. She would not be dismissed by him. She unbuckled her seatbelt with a loud, metallic clack. "What do you think you're doing, Mom?" Chloe asked, instantly appearing at her side. "I'm not sitting next to this person," Carolyn announced, standing up in the aisle. "He threatened me. I want him removed from this flight. Right now." The cabin went silent. Every eye was on them. "Ma'am, please sit down. The pilot is trying to resolve the maintenance issue," Chloe pleaded, her face pale. "I will not. Not until he is removed. I am a Premier 1K member, and I am telling you, I feel unsafe. He was aggressive. He was threatening. This was a new level." Marcus unbuckled his own seatbelt and stood up, a move that forced Carolyn to take a step back. He was a foot taller than her, and where she was all brittle, chaotic anger, he was a solid, immovable object. "That is a lie," Marcus said, his voice now resonating with cold authority. He looked past Carolyn, directly at Chloe. "Flight 1109, seat 1B. My name is Marcus Thorne. I have been polite. I have been patient. This passenger," he nodded at Carolyn, "is lying. I want that noted. And I want a different seat. I will not sit next to a woman who has verbally assaulted me and now falsely accused me of a crime." The situation had gone critical. Chloe was frantically whispering into the cabin phone, calling the purser, the gate, probably the pilot. "Sir, ma'am, please, both of you sit down," she begged. "I will sit in the galley," Marcus stated. "I will sit in the cockpit. I will not sit here." "Oh, look at him giving orders," Carolyn shrieked. "He thinks he's the pilot now." It was at that exact, chaotic moment that Captain Miller's voice came over the intercom again. His tone was no longer mildly apologetic. It was grim. "Folks, I have some bad news. The issue is not a faulty sensor. Maintenance has flagged a potential hydraulic fluid leak in the port side wing assembly. This is not a quick fix. In fact, they're grounding the aircraft." He paused, letting the information sink in. "United Flight 1109 to Austin has been cancelled." The words hit the cabin like a decompression. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then, absolute chaos. Carolyn Sterling, who had been mid-shriek, just froze. The colour drained from her face, leaving behind a pasty, slack-jawed mask of pure, unadulterated panic. The accusation, the drama, the prejudice, all of it evaporated, replaced by a new, more primal terror. "Cancelled," she whispered, her voice cracking. No, it can't be." She grabbed Chloe's arm, her designer nails digging in. "It can't be cancelled. I have a meeting, a 2 p.m. pitch. My career is on this flight." Marcus watched her, his own disappointment about the delay completely overshadowed by the sheer Shakespearean collapse happening next to him. "Ma'am, you need to let go of my arm," Chloe said, wincing. "No, you don't understand." Carolyn's voice was rising to a hysterical crescendo. "The Sterling Apex pitch, it's everything." Marcus's head, which had been turned toward the window, snapped back. Sterling. Apex. He looked at the hysterical woman, her platinum hair now disheveled, her mask of superiority shattered. Carolyn Sterling, of Sterling Ventures. Oh God, it wasn't just a random encounter. Carolyn Sterling was the head of the last-ditch investment group trying to block his acquisition of Apex Systems. The 2 p.m. pitch wasn't just a meeting, it was her final, desperate attempt to convince the Apex board to take her lowball offer instead of his. An offer he knew, from his own intel, was her company's last gasp effort to stay solvent. The woman who had just insulted him, degraded him, and tried to have him thrown off the flight, was the woman whose financial ruin he was flying to Austin to finalize. And she had no idea. The command to deplane and proceed to the customer service desk unleashed a new kind of pandemonium. The quiet, leather-scented cocoon of first class instantly evaporated, replaced by the raw, panicked energy of 200 people whose plans had just been atomized. Marcus moved with a calm, deliberate speed that was the exact opposite of the chaos around him. While other passengers were grabbing their phones to frantically dial the airline's jammed 1-800 number, Marcus was already texting his executive assistant, Rhonda. Rhonda was a legend in his company, a logistical miracle worker who could bend time and space to her will. His text was simple. UA 1109 cancelled. SFO, mechanical. Need to be in AUS by 1 p.m. local. Activate the charter. Before he had even stepped back into the terminal, his phone vibrated. A single, beautiful word. Done. This was the difference between wealth and power. Wealth, like Carolyn's, was brittle. It was a $50,000 bag and a sense of entitlement. Power, like Marcus's, was quiet. It was a Gulfstream GA50 being fueled at a private terminal, a 5-minute drive away. He walked past the gate, where the agent, David, was already being swallowed by a sea of angry travelers. At the front of that line, gesticulating wildly, was Carolyn Sterling. "I don't think you understand," she was screaming, her voice raw. "I am not asking. I am telling you. You will find me a seat on another plane to Austin. I don't care if it's American, Delta, or a Southwest cattle car. Get me on a flight." David, the gate agent, looked like he was one shout away from walking off the job forever. "Ma'am, the entire airport is backed up. A storm system over Dallas is creating a ground stop. There are no other flights to Austin with available seats until tomorrow morning. I'm sorry." "Sorry?" she shrieked. "Sorry doesn't save my company. Do you know who I am? I am Carolyn Sterling. My lawyers will own this airline." Marcus shook his head, a small, sad gesture. He continued walking, following the signs for ground transportation, not connecting flights. He felt a small presence at his elbow. He turned. It was Ben, the young tech bro from Seat 2D. "Mr. Thorne?" Ben asked, his voice hesitant. Marcus paused. "Yes? I wanted to say, what she did back there was, man, it was just awful. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I'm a big fan of your work at Aegis. Your last keynote at SXSW was game-changing." Marcus stopped walking and gave the young man his full attention. "Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that." She mentioned Apex. Is the deal? Ben's eyes were wide with the dawning realization of what he had just witnessed. Marcus smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "The deal is fine. The deal is going to be great." He clapped Ben on the shoulder. "Good luck getting home." "Yeah, you too, sir." "Wow." Ben stood there for a moment, starstruck, before being swept back into the tide of frantic passengers. Marcus, meanwhile, exited the secure area, pulling out his phone. A new text from Rhonda. "Black car, 12. ETA, 4 mins. Signature terminal. B, your crew is CPT Davis and a full-service team. Wheels up in 45. The Austin team is notified of your new ETA. You'll be there by 12:50 p.m. Plenty of time." He emerged into the cool, foggy San Francisco air, just as a gleaming black Cadillac Escalade pulled silently to the curb. The driver stepped out, holding a small, discreet tablet with the Aegis logo. "Mr. Thorne, a pleasure. We'll have you on your way immediately." Marcus slid into the plush leather interior. The door closed with a satisfying, soundproof thump, sealing him off from the world of cancellations, delays, and public hysterics. As the car pulled away, he glanced back at the terminal. Through the glass, he could still see the chaotic scene at the United desk, and at the center of it, a flash of platinum blonde hair, a figure of a woman who was, at this very moment, watching her entire world burn down, all because she couldn't be bothered to move her purse. He felt a twinge of something. Not pity, exactly. Not satisfaction, either. It was more like inevitability. The universe, he mused, had a funny way of balancing its books. He opened his briefcase, pulled out the Apex acquisition file, and began to read. He had a meeting to prepare for. Carolyn Sterling was a fighter. She hadn't built Sterling Ventures from her father's small $1 million loan by backing down. She was a shark, and she smelled blood in the water, even if, at this moment, it felt distinctly like her own. "Tomorrow morning is not an option," she seethed at David, the gate agent, who was visibly wilting. "Ma'am, there is literally nothing I can do," David said, his voice cracking. "I can't invent a plane. I can't build a seat. Everything is booked. Your best bet is to get a hotel." "A hotel?" She repeated the word as if he'd suggested she sleep in a ditch. "I have a $200 million pitch at 2 p.m. A hotel?" She turned from the desk, her mind racing, processing options. She was a problem solver. She could charter. Yes, that was it. She could charter a plane. It would cost a fortune, but she could write it off. She pulled out her iPhone, her hands shaking so much she could barely type her passcode. She bypassed her contacts and went straight to Google. "Private charter SFO to Austin." She started calling. The first 3 numbers she tried, NetJets, Wheels Up, XO. All told her the same thing. "We're sorry, Ms. Sterling, but we have no aircraft available at SFO on such short notice. There's a high-demand event in Austin, ma'am. Everything is booked solid. We might be able to get you a plane from Oakland, but it wouldn't be wheels up for at least 5 or 6 hours. You'd be in Austin by 8 p.m. No, no, no. She slammed her phone down on her lap, drawing stares. 8 p.m. was useless. The Apex board would have voted. The Aegis deal would be done. Thorne would have won. Thorne. The name echoed in her head. She hated him. She hated his calm, his suit, his insolence. This was all his fault. If he hadn't argued with her, if he hadn't caused that scene, the plane might have... What? Taken off with a hydraulic leak and crashed? Her mind refused to follow that logic. No, he had brought this bad energy, this karma. She was scrolling frantically through her text messages, trying to find her contact at the Apex board, a man named Henderson, to tell him she'd be late when she saw a name. Ben. Not her contact. Ben, the tech kid from 2D. He had just posted on LinkedIn, a platform she checked religiously. It was a post, not 5 minutes old. Ben Schrader. You will not believe what just happened on UA 1109. Witnessed some 1950s-level racism from a lady in 1A toward a black passenger. She demanded he be removed. Jokes on her. The passenger was Marcus Thorne. Yes, the Marcus Thorne of Aegis Innovations. The flight got cancelled, and she had a total meltdown about a meeting. You can't make this stuff up. Xwaiwe Wafa 9. Karma Carolyn's blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid. Marcus, Thorne, Aegis, Innovations, the name on her pitch deck, the name of the company that was swallowing Apex, the man whose photo was on the cover of the Forbes issue, currently sitting on her desk, back in her office. She hadn't recognized him. He was younger in the photo, and she was... well, she hadn't looked at him. She had seen him, a black man in a suit in her space, and her brain had slotted him into a box labeled threat or inconvenience. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God." The man she had called an interloper. The man she'd accused of getting his ticket with unearned miles. The man she'd tried to have removed from the flight was the very person she was flying to fight against. No, wait. It was worse. Her deal, the Sterling Ventures counteroffer, was a desperate, underfunded mess. She knew it. The only reason the Apex board was even entertaining it was because a few of them, Henderson included, were old guard and nervous about Thorne's aggressive AI integration. Her pitch was never really about buying Apex. It was about being bought. Her entire plan, her only plan, was to make such a public nuisance of herself that Marcus Thorne, to get her out of the way and silence the competition, would be forced to acquire Sterling Ventures as a small, insignificant part of the main deal. She was a remora, trying to attach herself to a great white shark, and she had just, for the last hour, tried to eat the shark. She remembered his face, the cold, quiet way he had looked at her. He wasn't just angry, he was assessing. He knew. She wasn't sure how he knew. Did he know who she was? He must have. He must have recognized her name. Sterling Ventures. It was on her luggage tags. He had seen her melt down. He had heard her scream, "The Sterling Apex pitch!" He knew. He had sat there, calmly, and let her destroy herself. The full, crushing weight of her actions slammed into her. Her prejudice hadn't just made her look like a fool. It had blinded her to the single most important variable in her professional life. She looked around the chaotic gate area, her eyes wild. He was gone. He hadn't been in the customer service line. He hadn't been on the phone to the airline. The tech kid. Ben. He had talked to Thorne. She spotted him near a charging station, typing furiously on his laptop, probably updating his LinkedIn post. She ran to him, her high heels clacking awkwardly on the linoleum. "You!" she panted, grabbing his arm. Ben flinched, ripping his headphones off. "Whoa, lady, back off. Him! Thorne! Where did he go? Did you see him leave?" Ben looked at her with pure, unadulterated contempt. "Why? So you can hurl some more racial slurs at him?" No, I need to apologize. I made a terrible mistake. Please, where did he go?" Ben pointed, his expression cold. "He left. Out the front. Looked like a private car was waiting for him. I guess he's not flying commercial anymore. I guess when you're Marcus Thorne, you don't have to wait in line." A private car. A private terminal. A private plane. Of course. While she was screaming at a gate agent, he was in the air. While she was begging for a seat in coach, he was sipping champagne in a Gulf Stream. He was going to be in Austin by 1 p.m. He was going to walk into that 2 p.m. board meeting, fresh and prepared. And she was going to be stranded in San Francisco, her career a smoking crater in the ground. Unless a new, desperate, utterly insane idea formed in her mind. She could still catch him. Signature flight support at SFO is a different world. It's a world without lines, without screaming children, without overwhelmed gate agents. It's a quiet, marble-floored bastion of efficiency, smelling of polished wood and new money. A black and yellow taxi screeched to a halt at the curb, a stark contrast to the gleaming black town cars that usually idled there. Carolyn Sterling burst out, shoving a handful of crumpled bills at the driver. "Keep it!" she yelled, stumbling on the curb, one of her $900 Manolo Blahnik heels snapping clean off. She kicked the broken shoe away, half running, half limping, through the automatic glass doors. Her helmet of hair was destroyed, a bird's nest of platinum strands. Her lipstick was smeared. Her linen suit, once crisp, was a roadmap of wrinkles and sweat. She looked, in a word, unhinged. A calm, immaculately dressed woman at the reception desk looked up, her expression of professional serenity faltering for just a fraction of a second. "May I help you, Mum?" "Marcus Thorne," Carolyn panted, leaning heavily on the desk. He's here. A flight to Austin. I'm with him." The receptionist, whose name tag read Jennifer, smiled a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I'm afraid I can't confirm names of clients, Ma'am. Do you have a tail number? Are you on his passenger manifest?" "No, yes. I'm his colleague, Carolyn Sterling, from Sterling Ventures. He's expecting me. It's an emergency." Jennifer's eyes flickered to the screen. She saw the manifest for the G650, bound for Austin. Tail number N910AG. Client, Aegis Innovations. Passenger, Marcus Thorne, 1. "One moment, Miss Sterling," Jennifer said, her voice impossibly polite. "Please take a seat." "I can't sit," Carolyn shrieked, her voice echoing in the quiet lounge. "You don't understand. That plane cannot take off without me." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. Is this her?" Carolyn spun around. Marcus Thorne was standing in the doorway that led to the tarmac. He was no longer in his suit jacket. He was in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, his tie gone. He held a tablet in one hand. He looked calm, powerful, and completely in control. He did not look surprised to see her. "Mr. Thorne," Carolyn breathed, a wave of desperate, humiliating relief washing over her. "Oh, thank God! Thank God, I caught you!" She hobbled toward him, a bizarre one-shoed sprint. "Mr. Thorne, I am so embarrassed, so deeply, profoundly sorry. What happened on that plane? It was a misunderstanding, a terrible, terrible mistake." Marcus just looked at her. He didn't speak. His silence was an indictment. You see, she continued, rambling, her words tumbling over each other. I was under an incredible amount of stress. This Apex deal, I'm sure you understand. The pressure. I wasn't myself. I would never, ever speak to someone that way. It was unforgivable. But I am begging you to forgive me. She was standing directly in front of him now. He could smell the stale perfume and the new sharp scent of her desperation. Mr. Thorne. Marcus, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, fawning whisper. We're on the same side, in a way. Both just trying to get to the same meeting. I need to be in Austin. My entire company, my legacy, it depends on this. I am begging you, please. You have a private plane. I can see it. It's right there. She pointed out the window at the sleek, beautiful Gulf Stream, its engines already whining, preparing for departure. Please, just one seat. In the back. I won't say a word. I'll sit in the galley, she said, unconsciously echoing his own words from the commercial flight. Please, Marcus. Don't let this silly misunderstanding ruin me. I'm a good businesswoman. I made a mistake. She looked up at him. Her eyes, which had been so full of ice and venom, were now wide, wet, and pleading. She was performing the role of her life, the contrite, humbled woman. Marcus watched her, his expression unreadable. He let the silence stretch, filling the marble hall, second after agonizing second. He let her stand there, off balance, one-shoed and utterly broken. Finally he spoke. His voice was not Angie. It was not triumphant. It was quiet, clear, and as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. A mistake, he repeated, tasting the word. You're right, Miss Sterling. You did make a mistake. He took a small step closer, and she flinched, but she did not back away. Your mistake, he continued, was not what you did. It was that you had no idea who you were doing it to. No, that's not true, she insisted. I would have been just as what? Horrified? Apologetic? Marcus laughed, a short, dry sound with no humor in it. No. If I were just a black lawyer, a black doctor, a black teacher, you would have felt completely justified. You would have filed your complaint, ruined that flight attendant's day, and felt smugly superior, telling your friends at the country club about the aggressive man on your flight. Your mistake was not your prejudice. Your mistake was aiming it at me. He looked past her, at the plane. You're right. I am flying to Austin. I am going to a 2 p.m. meeting. I am going to buy Apex Systems. And when I do, I'm going to liquidate their non-performing assets. He finally met her eyes again. The pleading in them was dying, being replaced by a dawning, new horror. Your pitch, Sterling Ventures. It was never a real offer, was it, Carolyn? He said, using her first name. It felt like a slap. It was a nuisance suit, dressed up as an acquisition. A hope and a prayer that I'd buy you out just to make you go away. Your company is leveraged to the hilt. You're 3 weeks from insolvency. This wasn't a pitch. It was a plea for a lifeline. She couldn't speak. He knew. He knew everything. So, yes, he said, turning back toward the tarmac. I am going to Austin. And you are not. Wait, she cried, lunging, grabbing his arm. This time he didn't flinch. He just looked down at her hand on his sleeve, and then back at her face, until she slowly, humiliatingly, let go. Please, she whispered, tears now tracking through her makeup. Don't do this, it's un-American. It's wrong. Marcus actually smiled. Wrong? You want to talk about wrong? Let's talk about seat 1B, a seat I paid for. A seat you decided was better suited for your handbag. He looked her up and down, from her ruined hair to her one bare, stockinged foot. You were right about one thing, Ms. Sterling, he said. That bag is very expensive. It's going to cost you about $200 million. And your company. He turned his back on her. Jennifer, he called to the receptionist, who was watching, wide-eyed. This woman is trespassing. Please call security. He walked out the door and onto the tarmac, not once looking back. He climbed the stairs to the GAGS 50. A flight attendant in the jet's doorway greeted him. He stepped inside. Carolyn Sterling stood, frozen, in the lounge. She watched as the heavy door of the Gulfstream swung shut with a pneumatic hiss, sealing him inside. She watched as the ground crew pulled the chocks. She watched as the plane began to taxi, slowly, then with purpose, toward the runway. She saw her entire life, her legacy, her father's company, taxiing away with it. She sank to her knees on the cold marble floor, heedless of the security guards now jogging toward her, and for the first time in her adult life, she let out a raw, guttural sob of pure, unadulterated defeat. Marcus settled into a seat that was more of a cream-colored leather throne. The cabin was silent, insulated from the roar of the engines. The flight attendant, a different, calmer Chloe, offered him a mimosa. He declined. Just water, please, and get Septor Davis the go-ahead. The sooner we're in the air, the better. Yes, Mr. Thorne. His phone buzzed. It was Rhonda. Henderson from the Apex board just called. Apparently Ms. Sterling has been trying to reach him. Hysterical. Henderson is rattled. He wanted to know if we'd still honor the terms if Sterling Ventures formally defaulted. Marcus typed his reply. Tell Henderson we'll be in touch, from 30,000 feet. The plane accelerated down the runway, a surge of power so smooth it was almost imperceptible. It lifted off, banking hard over the San Francisco Bay, punching through the fog layer into the brilliant, unforgiving sunshine. Marcus looked out the window. He didn't feel triumph. He felt a profound, heavy exhaustion. This wasn't a victory. It was just the removal of an obstacle, a deeply unpleasant, self-immolating obstacle. He thought about the script from the plane, the one he'd been forced to play in his whole life. People like you. You don't belong. Carolyn Sterling hadn't just insulted him. She had insulted his grandfather, who'd worked 3 jobs, his mother, who had scrubbed floors so he could go to coding camp. He had built Aegis Innovations not just for himself, but as a fortress against a world that was always, always waiting to remind him that he was, in their eyes, an interloper. Today the fortress had held. The flight to Austin was 3 hours. He spent the first 2 finalizing the acquisition strategy. He spent the last hour sleeping, a deep, dreamless sleep he hadn't had in months. He landed at Austin Bergstrom International Airport's private terminal at 12:48 p.m. A black Suburban was waiting on the tarmac. At 1:30 p.m., he walked into the gleaming, glass-walled boardroom of Apex Systems. The board was already assembled. They looked nervous, like men who knew they were about to be carved up. Henderson, the chairman, stood to greet him. Marcus, he said, his handshake a little too firm. Good to see you. We heard. There were some travel issues. Just a minor delay, Marcus said, taking his seat at the head of the table. Nothing we couldn't handle. And Miss Sterling, Henderson ventured. She will not be joining us. No, Mr. Henderson, Marcus said, opening his briefcase. She will not. He pulled out a single, slim file folder. Now, shall we begin? I believe you have some final signatures for me. Back in San Francisco, the day was ending. Carolyn Sterling sat on a hard plastic chair in the SFO unsecured terminal. Her phone had died. Her last-ditch calls to her bankers had gone to voicemail. They knew. Everyone knew. She had been escorted from the signature terminal by security. She was now just a woman. A woman with one shoe, messy hair, and a $50,000 bag on the floor next to her, which now just looked like a gaudy, oversized purse. Her flight, the one David the gate agent had finally, pityingly booked for her, was at 7:10 a.m. Tomorrow, in economy, a middle seat, a news report flashed on the terminal's overhead TVs, a financial segment. The anchor was bright and cheerful. And in breaking tech news, the $4.2 billion acquisition of Apex Systems by Aegis Innovations was just finalized. Aegis CEO Marcus Thorne, who reportedly flew to Austin to sign the deal personally, said in a statement. Carolyn looked up. On the screen was Marcus Thorne. He was walking out of the Apex building, surrounded by cameras, smiling. He looked strong, confident, and completely in his element. He looked like he belonged. A young man sat down next to her, setting his own backpack on the floor. He glanced at her one bare foot, at her face, and then quickly looked away, shuffling his chair a few inches farther. He didn't want to be associated with her. She looked at her Birkin bag, the bag that had started it all, the symbol of her status, her wealth, her right to be there. She thought about the man who was now, effectively, one of the most powerful men in technology. The man who had sat in 1B. A final devastating thought occurred to her, a final twist of the knife, delivered by her own memory, when he had stood up to confront her, when he had demanded a new seat. He hadn't just said he was Marcus Thorne, he had said, Flight 1109, Seat 1B. My name is Marcus Thorne. He hadn't been identifying himself for the flight attendant. He had been identifying himself for her. He had known. From the moment she had screamed, Sterling Apex Pitch, he had known exactly who she was. The whole chase, the race to the private terminal, the desperate, groveling plea. He had been expecting it. He had wanted her to beg. He had wanted to see her break. He hadn't just let her ruin herself. He had provided the stage, turned on the lights, and then handed her the script. Carolyn Sterling finally understood. She hadn't been struck by random, bad luck karma. She had been hit by a precision-guided missile, and the man who had pushed the button was now 30,000 feet in the air, flying back to a life she couldn't even imagine while she was stuck on the ground in a world that, she was horrified to realize, no longer had a place for her. The bag sat on the floor, a silent testament to a price she never thought she'd have to pay. 6 months later, the name Sterling Ventures was nothing but a filed bankruptcy notice in a Delaware court. The offices had been cleared out, the art on the walls auctioned off to pay creditors. Carolyn, a footnote in the financial pages, had sold her homes in the Hamptons and Palm Beach. She now lived in a modest condo in Florida, purchased by her long-suffering sister. Marcus Thorne was on the cover of Time magazine, the man who built tomorrow. The Aegis Apex merger had been more successful than anyone predicted. Aegis stock was at an all-time high. He was in his new Austin office, an expansive space with a 180-degree view of the city, when Rhonda patched in a call. Mr. Thorne, I have it's a strange one. A woman named Chloe, from a United flight. Marcus paused. Chloe, put her through. A hesitant voice came on the line. Mr. Thorne, I don't know if you remember me. I was the flight attendant on that cancelled flight from SFO. I remember you, Chloe, Marcus said, his voice warm. You were in an impossible situation. I hope you didn't get in any trouble. Oh, no, sir. That's why I'm calling. Your office, well, someone from your office sent a letter to United Corporate on my behalf, describing the incident and praising my professionalism under duress. They promoted me. I'm a purser now, lead of the international crew. It changed my life. Marcus smiled. You deserved it, Chloe. You tried to de-escalate. That's more than I can say for others. That's the other thing, sir, she said, her voice dropping. I saw her. Carolyn Sterling. I was working a flight from Miami to here, Austin. She was on it. In first class? Marcus asked, though he knew the answer. No, sir. Seat 3080, middle seat, back of the plane, right by the lav. She looked different, smaller. She had a regular, small black suitcase. Not the white bag. She just stared out the window. She stared at the person by the window. She asked me for a water and she said, please and thank you. It was weird. Marcus fell quiet for a long moment, his mind weighing the silence between them. Did she recognize you? He finally asked, his tone measured but curious. I don't think so, Chloe replied softly. And I didn't say anything to her. I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Thorne, for everything you've done. You're welcome, Chloe, he said, after a pause, his voice calm, almost distant. Have a safe flight. When the line went dead, Marcus stood still for a moment, phone still in hand, before setting it down. He turned toward the window, gazing out at the city skyline, a city he was, in many ways, reshaping to reflect his own design. 38E. The thought came to him like a quiet echo. The universe didn't always deal its lessons with thunderbolts or sudden punishment. Sometimes karma was subtle, patient, a slow erosion of privilege, a gentle but relentless descent. Not a dramatic fall from grace, but a steady slide, from the luxury of a Birkin bag in seat 1B to the cramped middle seat near the airplane bathroom. He reached for his briefcase, the same understated yet refined one he had carried all those years ago. Today, he had a meeting with the city council, an initiative to fund a new STEM program for underprivileged high school students. As he walked toward the door, his reflection caught in the glass. He saw not just a man of success, but a man who had rebuilt himself, someone who understood better than most that the seat you hold in life is never promised. You fight for it. You earn it every day. Or one day, it ends up belonging to someone else, along with their bag. What just happened to Carolyn Sterling is more than just karma. It's a real-life lesson in what happens when entitlement meets consequence. We see these stories every day, but rarely with such a dramatic ending. The world is full of people who think their status, their wealth, or their privilege gives them a right to treat others as less than. What would you have done in Marcus's shoes? Would you have given her that ride? Would you have been as calm? Let us know your real, honest thoughts in the comments below. We read all of your feedback, and it helps us find more stories just like this one. If you love stories about justice, drama, and hard karma, do us a huge favor. It's free, and it helps the channel more than you know. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. We have new dramas coming every single week, and you don't want to be left at the gate. Thanks for watching.